Chatter. I want to thank our two lovely guests for giving us their time today, Judge Weilheimer and Teresa Doherty, sorry, and Ms. Davoli and all of our students. Thank you for participating, and we're going to get started. So what we'll get started is, guess, the students did read your bios, so if we're going to you can introduce yourself, but a little bit like the bio they already read, so whatever you want them to know, maybe that's not on the bio. Quick synopsis, and then we'll get into the questions. So, Judge Weilheimer, do you want to start?
If you already read my bio, you probably know most of the things you need to about me, but I'm a judge here in Montgomery County in the Court of Common Pleas, which is everything from divorce cases through homicide, and anything that will come into a court that you've ever seen on television is something that I have handled. In order to get here, I went to law school. And obviously to go to law school, you have to get through college. To go to law school, you can major in anything you want in college. It doesn't matter, unlike going to med school or dental school or something like that. So I was an international studies major in college, which for no reason other than I was interested in it, and it gave me the opportunity to study abroad. But I've been on the bench. I'm finishing my 7th year. We are primarily virtual right now, which is an interesting way of conducting court cases, but you all shouldn't be virtual for school, and that's just where we all are right now.
Thank you. Do you want to go ahead, Teresa? Thank you.
Yeah. So my name is Teresa Doherty. I graduated from Abington in 2009. I went to a small college in Montana to major in equine assisted activities and therapies. And over the years, I have worked a lot of different jobs at Pegasus, and I'm currently the executive director.
Thank you both. So right before this, we met with the students, and they gave us some questions that I'll start out with. And the first question is for Judge Weilheimer, and it is, what is the hardest case that you ever had?
I think the hardest case I ever had, which is not a sexy case, so you would think I've been in every division. So what that means is I've been in family court, which deals with all disputes between parents, custody, divorce. I've been in the civil division, which is disputes over money, criminal court, which is all the things you'll see on Law and Order. And right now I'm in orphans court, which deals with trust and estates disputes, guardianships, termination of parental rights, end of life decisions. The things that are helping people move forward at sort of equity and end stages of, most primarily end stages of their life, but some people in the beginning when we're terminating parental rights. But one of the hardest cases I had was, or probably the hardest case, dealt with divorced parents in the custody of their child, because in most custody cases, it's very clear which parent is the good parent. In this case, both parents were amazing. They had been divorced for a long time, but they had raised their children together. They lived in the same town. Mom was the top researcher for a particular disease, and the most important person in the country for this particular type of research. The father had an amazing, successful business in the town where they lived. Both were great people. Both did a great job parenting, but Mom's company was being sold and moved to Boston. So Mom wanted to take the kids with her to Boston. Dad couldn't move his company, and both parents were involved with the kids every single day. So what's the right decision? Do I say, Mom, you can't pursue this career that you have built spent your entire life building, and you are at the top of your game? How, as a woman, do I say to another woman, nope, sorry, you worked so hard, you shouldn't be able to do that? But how do I tell a dad who's done everything right, who looked to determine if he can move his business to Boston, whether or not he should move that, whether or not I should move his children, and he would have to make a decision either to leave his livelihood behind to be with his children or to stay with his business. And it was actually one of the most difficult cases. It was the most difficult case I ever had, because everybody was good and everybody was doing the right thing.
So you can't tell us what happened?
I can.
Okay.
I decided that, so the choice was not whether or not Mom could move to Boston. The choice was whether or not she could take the children to Boston. And I said no. Mom was able to explore working virtually, but to uproot the children at that time, they were 10 and 12, and to have them make a choice. I mean, Mom was making a choice to move to Boston. She was, nationally renowned, if not world renowned, and my hope was that her company would want to work with her to keep her in that position. But I didn't think it was fair to the children. But it was the case I struggled most over because just everybody was doing the right thing.
Wow. Now, when something like that happens, do you confide in someone, or what's your process to deal with?
I mean, the decision is ultimately up to me,
yeah.
but a lot of times what will happen in court is while I'm sitting there, I have my court clerk who is always in the room with me, and I have my court reporter who is creating a transcript of everything that takes place. So a lot of times during cases, we will process together. So if someone was particularly outrageous, or when I had a criminal case with this horrific, like a true sociopath, something you would read stories about, and he tried flipping the table and charging the bench, and you need time to decompress. We all went in the back, and the three of us would process together, because you do need to process. And on cases like, the one I talked about, just talking through my thoughts is helpful. I mean, the decision is ultimately up to me, but any of those cases, or every once in a while, someone will say something outrageous, and when you take a break, I'm like, am I the only one that heard that? Nope, we all heard it. That's and it is always helpful, whether you're doing things yourselves, with your friends, or trying to figure out what's next steps for schools, or what I'm doing, to be able to have someone to process with is helpful.
Very good. Oh my gosh. Okay. That was a very good question to the student who asked that on here. So now we're going to take it over to Teresa. And can you pronounce your job, what it is, so I can practice, because I always pronounce it wrong. Say it one more time for me.
It's equine assisted activities and therapies.
Okay. Equine assisted activities and therapies. Okay.
Yeah.
It's really not that hard.
What does equine mean, Pam?
Horse. Sorry. Oh, you were asking.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. It's okay. Okay. So question for you is what's your exposure to this form of therapy? And did you ever think of other forms of therapy, in your process?
So I found Pegasus actually from having to do the required volunteering hours through school when I was in high school.
Abington.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what you start those hours, I think I had to start it when I was a sophomore in high school. And I went to Pegasus because I like animals.
I'm sorry, could you explain what Pegasus is to the
Yes. Pegasus is the facility. It's right in Northeast Philadelphia. We are a PATH Premier Accredited Center, with our primary goal being offering, equine assisted activities and therapies. So we adapt horseback riding for people with disabilities and diagnoses is the short of it. So I went to Pegasus to do my hours, and I told my mom when she dropped me off that she better pick me up exactly at however many hours I had to do. And I was going home, and I was never coming back to this place. And I ended up really falling in love with it. And for me, it was kind of selfish when I was picking my career, because it was always about how I felt working in that field, right? That's the whole point of your job. You shouldn't hate your job. Most people don't get paid enough to hate their jobs. So I started working when I was younger and really fell in love with it. I did double major in psychology because I think horses in general and being in charge of their care can be extremely mentally exhausting. And sorry, the cat always has to come in every Zoom call. And so I was always concerned that if I was directly responsible for the horse's care for a long period of my career, that would really drain me. And I doubled. And the really nice thing about therapeutic or equine assisted activities and therapies is that the field has really expanded. So originally, 50 years ago, when they came up with this organization, it was all about adapting horseback riding, actually physically riding a horse. And now it's so much more than that. There's the physical, there's the sport, there's the activity part of it, but there's also the mental health portion of the field. So we do programming where people never even ride. They just work on life skills with the horses on the ground. So things like respect, trust, following directions, any really life skill that you can think of, you can work with horses. So for at-risk populations, people that suffer from addiction or abuse really, really benefit. And it's typically just a less clinical approach because you're not sitting in a room, you're out, you're moving. So for some people, it's just an easier, different approach than a clinical office setting.
Okay. Quick question for the students. How many of you, before 5 minutes ago, have heard of equine assisted activities and therapy? So now when people ask you what you learned today or this week, there you go. No, so that's good. Thank you, Teresa, for that. That's super interesting. And that actually leads to the next question. And students, interrupt anytime, unmute if you have a question. I'll give a pause. We'll start with Judge Weilheimer, but it kind of is a good segue from Teresa about, what we always get into, Judge Weilheimer, is self-care and stress, and how obviously your job is super stressful. So how do you deal with stress?
Well, I think it depends if you're virtual for all of us or if you're in person. In person, it's by regularly interacting with my colleagues. There are very few people that do what I do. Out of the 800,000 people that live in Montgomery County, there are 23 judges, and we all have similar pressures. And whether it's the decision I was telling you about, the parents sentencing someone to jail, telling someone that they've lost their case when they thought they were going to, get millions. So there's lots of stresses that relate to it. And being able to talk to your colleagues who are going through the same thing is very helpful. So on a daily basis, when I'm in the courthouse, we have lunch together almost every day, many of us. When it comes to being virtual, which we have been primarily since March, I take a lot of walks, and it's just both for me and also because if I'm sitting at home, I just annoy my children. So my son who Erica knows well, my son is a senior in high school, and like all of you, he's doing things virtually. And when I am not working, if I'm just sitting in the kitchen asking him how every class went, it doesn't go well for both of us. And my daughter, who's a sophomore in college, was home for the end of her spring semester, and nobody wants mom asking them questions every 2 minutes. So separating a little bit is probably a good thing for all of us.
Very relatable to, I'm guessing, a lot of these sophomores in the class. Thank you.
Just a related question. Your son, Judge Weilheimer, is the head of our drone club, is he not?
He is. He's working on another video now.
That's awesome. That's great. I don't know if you kids have seen the drone footage of the campus.
If you ever see videos of the school students and it's the school from like a bird's eye view, it's from a drone, and Judge Weilheimer's son set that all up and is on the head of the drone club. So if anyone is interested in that type of thing.
And he's graduating, so they will need other people to take over. He was in the building last night with the hard hat Mr. Barrios gave him so he doesn't get hurt when he's in there filming the hallways. And apparently what was English and whatever is above English, that section is completely gone. So he was having fun flying the drone through spaces that used to be your classrooms.
Mr. Bully's face is priceless.
Right. You'll see it when he posts the video this weekend.
Oh my gosh, we could, and you could share that in your classroom, Mr. Bully. Okay, I think this is for Judge also. Do you ever feel bias in a situation, even though you can't choose their side?
I think I work, and we all know as judges how not to let bias influence our decisions. But I will say there are times that you want to help someone and that I want to help someone and get frustrated when the law or the facts just don't come out that way. So that's probably the better answer. We all have inherent biases one way or the other. I'll give you an example. There was a man who was involved with he was a tractor trailer driver driving his truck. After driving 50 miles, the trailer separated from the tractor. The trailer flew off, hit another car, caused it to explode, and a man died. Terrible. It was supposed to be a jury trial, but as we were about to start, his attorney at the last minute said, I'm going to make it a bench trial, which means I make the decision whether or not this man is guilty. And before he came to sit at the defense table with his attorney, he and I are different religions. That's not what's important. He stood up, he crossed himself, he kissed his wife, and you can tell that he took it very seriously. So to me, it made me connect with this man because I'm like, you know what? He's not just some thug who's coming up, who's, thinking it's not a big deal, whatever happens here. He was taking this very seriously, but somebody's dead as a result of what happened. And, so in that is an example of someone who I wanted it to go well for him. It happened to go very well because the prosecutor couldn't prove their case at all. He couldn't prove that this man did anything wrong. It was just a flaw in the machinery, not anything he had done, and he was found not guilty. But there are times where you're rooting for a particular person, but that the law doesn't work it out for that person. Or there are times that's hard where I had a particular case where a woman just had an awful attorney, someone who was just like, you don't know how he ever graduated from law school, let alone passed the bar. And she lost her case in front of a jury because he was so bad. And you want to help someone like that, but I can't. So those are, I don't know if that answers the question directly, but those are just examples of things that play in that are just human nature.
When you have those cases where you feel bad for not helping, I just want to vouch for you and say you help a lot of others. So
Right.
Not that that doesn't mean anything to you, but
Well,
I think.
and there are ways that I think as judges we can still, even if people don't get, so the family of the man in that tractor trailer accident who had died was clearly devastated with the outcome. But I think as judges, when you recognize people's pain and acknowledge it, even if they don't get the verdict they want, validating it is helpful. And, and the case where the woman was convicted because her attorney was lousy, I was able to recognize who he was in the sentencing, but not necessarily in the verdict because I couldn't change the jury's verdict. So there are ways you can still be helpful, and I appreciate that, Greta, but it's, I think, a lot for all of us, especially when we see what's going on in society right now, whether it is people being incredibly stressed because of the pandemic, losing their incomes, the racial equality issues that are coming up, making sure people are heard and validated, I think goes a long way to, helping us all move forward.
Okay, that is excellent. Thank you. I just made me think about how your careers are completely, I would say, couldn't be more different, but how both of them, to what Judge just said, are helping society and individuals, especially in particularly, sometimes groups of people that are sometimes forgotten or off to the side, whether they're in court because they're in an unfortunate situation, or if they're special needs kids or teenagers who have just kind of been, my hand motions kind of speak for me, but on the fringes, and like both of your careers, although different, kind of help provide them services. Anyway, I'm going to pause again for students. You can use the chat or you can unmute yourself. Come on. Okay, I'll read from these are technically student questions that I'm reading. So we'll start with Teresa. They love to know, these are questions, both of you are, prior guests, so the questions that students like to hear about. What are some challenges, a weakness you have that you work on, and like challenge that you face on your journey from basically, high school to here? If Teresa, you can start.
So I only became executive director extremely recently, like week 2 of pandemic lockdown is when we started the transition. And I was in the role originally. So I started, and for a while I was just doing the job and I wasn't given the title. I more had to kind of prove that I could do the title. I really loved my job, as I previously was program director and equine director. And I loved that job. I really, really did. I think for me, it was something that, although I have weaknesses I think I have leadership development weaknesses because I've always worked in the same company my whole life. I never had to do leadership training. I was always kind of handed things because people knew me, and I had the education, I had everything, but my weaknesses were overlooked because everyone already knew my strengths. People didn't have to get to know my strengths and my weaknesses. And I think that in this position, as executive director, although I really am happy to be doing it, I think that I can really help business grow and move forward. It is a lot of things I just don't know how to do. I am not good at sitting at a computer all day. I am not good at, it's showing a lot more of my weaknesses. I found I was able to hide them before. If I didn't want to sit at my office because I didn't feel like it that day, I went out and I did barn things. I'm not allowed to do that anymore. I have to sit at my desk. I have to get those things done. And I have found that when I avoid tasks in my job, I get very anxious. I think even in high school, I was the same way, where I would avoid projects, I would avoid homework, I would avoid. And then when I got to that breaking point, I just didn't do any of it. And then I really was upset. So I tend to do the same thing even as an adult. I avoid a job that I think I don't want to do. And then finally, I get to the point where I have to force myself to do it in order to be able to sleep that night because I'm so anxious. So I'm still, I think, growing up in that sense. I have to force myself to be a little bit more proactive and kind of stop avoiding things as much. I think any professional kind of goes through that unless you're really like a go-getter. So I really have just been forcing myself to learn. Like Judge Weilheimer said, I also really rely on my staff. I'm extremely lucky and fortunate to a lot of those staff members I've even grown up with. So we all know each other really well, and we can really support one another whenever, one of us gets overwhelmed or whenever one of us their weaknesses are showing more than their strengths.
Very good, thank you. And asking for help is hard. And I can only imagine as you kind of transition upwards, it might be even harder, like that vulnerability. So thank you for sharing and relating it to high school. Thank you. Judge Weilheimer, do you want to talk about a weakness or a challenge?
I mean, I think a weakness or challenge, and if someone was banging when you were stating the question on the screen. So is it a weakness or challenge starting with education or currently?
Through your path from, I'm going to say high school because these students are in high school, to where you are now. It could be like a weakness that you work on and, you know what I mean, that you work on to overcome, or a specific challenge that you hit along the way that you had to overcome. Kind of two-parter kind of.
Okay. I will share two things with you. The first weakness would be I didn't study in high school. I thought, thought socializing was way more important than studying. And I remember being in 11th grade and opening the envelope where they gave it to us in social studies with my class rank and being shocked that I could be where it said I was. Because I knew I was bright, but you do have to open books to actually do well in high school. And starting to focus middle of your junior year of high school is really not the way of doing it. And unlike as competitive as it is now, it's harder for all of you now than it was when I got into college, but I was able to, get into a decent college. I think, to be fair, in large part, the colleges I got into were the ones where I had interviews, and I was able to then sell myself and my ability. But it was figuring out, coming from a place where I didn't choose to study, how to study in college. And I was able to finish college with an A average, and I was able to get into law school, and I'm in my dream job and exactly where I wanted to be. But that was a struggle because, I did really well, like I'm sure lots of people do, up until about, through 6th grade, I had straight A's, and then 7th grade, things got fun. And 8th grade, they were fun. And all of a sudden, there was always sort of, if I thought there was going to be time to get it done. And it became a problem for me when all of a sudden where I thought I'd go to college was not where I wound up going to college. And again, life is exactly where I would have wanted it to turn out. But if I can, and my children regularly mock me for my high school experience versus their high school experience. But if you have the choice to your sophomores to work hard now, you don't want to be in the position I was in. That being said, it did teach me the value of having to work hard to get there and to understand that it is not always going to come easy. So that would be sort of an initial struggle. I will say, and this goes to, probably not an ideal topic for 10th graders, but I'm going to share it anyway. In the very beginning of my career, actually a few years into my career, I had a circumstance with a judge who is now deceased who decided to try to kiss me while I was married, not someone I had a relationship with, someone that was not in any way appropriate. And how do you handle that? How do you handle that circumstance where if you go against someone in power, it can affect your career, but if you don't do it, you're not standing up for yourself and you're allowing someone to behave badly. And it was, that's definitely a challenge. And that is something that, people encounter more than you expect. And I was in a position of authority. I was in the district attorney's office. I had lots of responsibility and never expected to encounter something like that. But we each have circumstances along our way that you have to figure out what's the right path to take for you.
Thank you.
Good
Sharing.
to keep something like that in mind. How would you react in a situation that was confrontational like that? I mean, just imagining a scenario to, have yourself prepared to respond the way you best want to.
Right. And I think it's very easy to think about it in the abstract as we hear everything with the Me Too movement. And I know both for my daughter and my son, people, like both of them understand the need to not be bystanders and to stand up. But there's a different scenario when you're making, when you have to make that decision for yourself of, yes, it's the right thing to do to stand up and to say something. But if you do that, that may change your complete trajectory in life. And are you okay with making that choice? And it's not, the answers are not as easy as they make it seem on TV when you're in the midst of, someone speaking out or a protest. These are hard questions, similar to the hard questions we're seeing for racial equality right now. And how do you speak up and how do you have your voice heard? Or, sexual equality. I mean, there's all things that are coming up that have really come to terms as you all have started school, but they were not discussed openly when I was in school. But it's not just easy answers for any of it.
Thank you for sharing. And absolutely.
Not sure you really wanted it to go that way, Ms. Garrett, but you asked.
No, I appreciate you sharing. And if that was your challenge, then yes, share away. And you know what? It helps. As you can see, students are very shy regardless on virtual learning, which I respect completely. But especially with topics like that, someone might not say anything right now, but it's sitting with someone somewhere and it means a lot. Students always come back later, maybe not right now, but there's someone somewhere that means a lot to. So I'll just say that. But anyway, to transition.
To a much lighter topic.
No, but
we can talk about my struggles with cooking and, why I order in all the time.
No, that's a part of the reason why we do this program is for people to be able to kind of hit topics that are hard and students can take it in. They don't need to say anything, but it helps them know whether it's something like that or something as easy as, yes, our last session, the speaker talked about not having confidence, and that shocked the students because this person seemed like the most confident person in the world. So, but her opening up and admitting her, that was a problem that she has even to this day, not as heavy, but still those types of admissions by people like you, that's a part of this program and that's important. So we are thankful that you were able to share that. And I mean it. I smile, but it's serious. What do you wish you had known in high school that you know now, that you're where you are now? Either one of you can jump in.
What I wish I knew in high school that I know now.
Now that you wish you knew in high school.
Did I say it the opposite way?
I think so. I think what we know now that we wish we knew in high school.
What did you know in high school that you don't know now? Wow. Okay. Yeah, reverse that. Thank you.
I would probably say that my mother was right. That's my biggest one all the time. My mother just retired as a school teacher. And I think that a lot of the things I struggle with, you know, working to be ahead rather than reacting. I say it all the time. So I've been with Pegasus for a really long time. It's almost 15 years that I have been with Pegasus in some form or another. And I've seen a lot of things. I've been there for really good days. I've been there for really bad days, but I think it gives me a really unique perspective on how to make it better. I work really hard to make it a better place, from all the different aspects, the programming we offer, our business structure, but all of it comes down to being a proactive organization versus a reactive organization. Because when we're reactive, that's when all of my days at Pegasus that have made me want to cry and go home and never come back have always been days where we had to be reactive rather than proactive. And I think I still, as an individual and personally, I tend to be reactive rather than proactive. And forever in high school, my mother tried to make me a proactive student. Get ahead, do your reading more don't leave it to the night before, do your projects ahead of time, balance your life, all of those things my mother tried to teach me at a young age. And now it's hard to make it habit, even though I know she was right. So that's my, see?
Thank you, Mr. Boley. So that is the 7 habits of a effective teen that we teach. Well, Mr. Boley mostly teaches. And there you go. So we are incorporating the curriculum like crazy, and we did not tell Teresa to say that.
And that
I promise.
harkens back to your statement on the procrastination. And, I was very guilty of that. And as I go along in life, Ms. Direct and I share a task tracker and just keep us on track of the things that we're trying to get done and the things that need to be addressed. And, something as simple as that really has helped me be better at procrastination. And that's a huge source of stress for me. And I'm sure you kids, putting off your assignments or your readings or whatever you have to do, I'm sure that comes into play for many of you.
I think the hard thing that I've realized as I've gotten older is this year we had the pandemic. We bought our first house. I got engaged. I'm planning a wedding. I've got a promotion. All of these big things are happening. And it doesn't just affect how you perform at your job. It affects everything. It trickles into it's not just you can leave work and go home and be happy. And it affects the way you treat all the people around you. And it's not just that you get to leave it at high school anymore, or you get to not check your grades online. It does eventually just trickle into your whole life. You can't get away from it.
Yes, and I just want to say the procrastination thing, what you started saying was proactive versus reactive. So that's so important, not just for schoolwork, but think about this. If you know where you stand on something and what your values are and what's important to you, when someone does something that causes a reaction from you, which, that's a guarantee, no matter if you're in 10th grade or if you're a judge on the high court or work in equine activities, it doesn't matter. Someone's going to make you react. But if you have this core where you know yourself and what's important to you and your values, then you may still react a little bit, but you can reel yourself in way faster if you read the 7 Habits book with Mr. Boley and know where you stand on things, because then that other person or that other situation can't kind of knock you off as easily because you know what's over there. Anyway, that was a great response. I forget where we are. So, Judge Block.
I'm happy to go to the next question, but your question was, what do you know now that you wish you knew in high school?
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Judge Weilheimer. You can totally take that one.
I think in addition to the importance of studying in high school, which I already addressed, I wish if I was looking back, if I was going to give advice to my high school self, is recognizing that people want to help you and that you have advocates everywhere you go in every stage of your life if you just ask them. People generally really like talking about themselves. And if you're interested or exploring a particular career and you reach out to someone and say, I'm thinking I like, math, and I'm thinking of being a teacher, I'm being an architect, doing whatever it is you want to do. Could I come talk to you about your career? Could I shadow you? The answer will almost always be yes. And then you can take from that. Let's say you find something you really like. Can you give me advice on what would be a good school for this? How do I pursue this career? Where can I get an internship? And keep that person in the loop. If they're really engaged with you, keep them in the loop. Send them a thank you note afterwards, and maybe reach out when you get into college. Hey, I decided to go to college. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm studying. That person then becomes invested in who you are and wants to help you succeed. I didn't realize that until I was in law school, and I knew what I wanted to do. And I started reaching out to people and asking them, can I come meet with you? Can you tell me how you got to where you are? Do you have anyone else that I can talk to? Can I use your name when they call them? Because they might not take my call because they don't know me. But if I call and said, Miss Garrett recommended I contact you, I'm interested in your career, would you be willing to talk to me? The answer was always yes. And it wound up bearing true. So I met a woman after my first summer of law school. I was doing an internship in her office, and we became friendly, and she knew that I really wanted to be a prosecutor. And I kept in touch with her throughout law school with everything that I was doing, just to keep in touch and tell her about my progress. I told her where I was applying for. I wanted to be in a district attorney's office, and the year I graduated from law school was a terrible recession. And I applied to every single district attorney's office from Maine to Florida, 189 offices. Wanted to come back home to Philadelphia, but who knew? So I made it down. There are 3,000 applicants for 25 jobs in Philadelphia every year. I made it to the finals. I didn't know this until after I got hired. But apparently there was one spot left, and there were 10 resumes on the district attorney's desk that she had to choose from. This woman, Barbara, who I had met after my first year of law school and interned for and kept in touch with throughout the years, had been advocating for me to the district attorney. So when the district attorney had those final 10 resumes to look at, she pulled mine because Barbara had said good things about me, and she knew that I was passionate about it because I had kept in touch with her. I didn't ask her to be helpful. I didn't even know she was going to do that, but it was the connection I made with her just by starting off talking to her about what she did and how I could get to be who she is. But people I find across the board want to be helpful. I think every person that Ms. Garrett has ever brought into these seminars keeps coming back and keeps making other connections. There was someone that we had in our very first seminar who is now on his way doing incredible real estate work because of connections he made through Abington and through people who want to help you all. So take advantage of these. Lots of people who want to help.
We mentioned him in the last session, and Judge Weilheimer, what you just said about reaching out and shadowing, it almost to the word is what someone said in the last session about reaching out and how they didn't realize how helpful, exactly, I'm not going to repeat it. It's exactly what you said about not being shy about reaching out. So Judge Weilheimer, I'm just saying, really even scripted the reach out. So that's why I wrote in the chat, write that down. You could even use a teacher. Ms. DeVoli said, this is correct. You know what I mean? If you feel like some type of weirdness about reaching out, you could always blame it on school. Talk to me first. I've helped students craft emails to professionals because that is a little bit intimidating. Ms. DeVoli, Ms. Summers, we are all here to help.
And I will say, to follow up on that, Ms. Garrett, there's so many people. Abington's a huge school, and it's actually smaller than it used to be. When I have friends who graduated from here, the graduating class was 1,000 people. You're now 600 people in a graduating class, but there's a lot of you. And there's got to be someone connected to Abington who's done exactly what you want to do. And you can, now with the internet, you can just search Abington High School graduate and X, and you're likely to find someone who, just because you're at Abington, is going to be willing to help.
Absolutely. And I think we picked the first 2 sessions are big Abington advocates, and I am just loving it because it's so relatable and so good for the kids to hear. Actually 3, because you're a graduate, Teresa. So that was, I'm going to act like that was on purpose, but it was not. So this is just great for the students to hear. And they actually did, in their responses to the last one we had, say, they are more grateful for living in Abington after hearing someone who became grateful, after the fact. And this person has seen a lot of the country and said she loves Abington. So we are going to go to, I don't know, I'm going to try to get to these last couple questions. These could apply to either of you. Let's see. I'm going to say both the questions so you can pick which one you want to take. And again, I'm going to stop. Sorry. Students, any questions?
I have a question. It's for both of y'all, but what skills or qualities do you think would be most important to have in your type of job, now, as a judge? And I'm sorry, I do not know how to pronounce it.
It's all right.
Therapist.
Yeah.
Why don't I start with, let Teresa start because I talk a lot and it's just my nature.
I would say, and I now actually say this to people when I talk about hiring somebody or bringing somebody in that's new. You cannot, or I don't think it's very easy to train work ethic. I cannot force you to work harder. I cannot, it doesn't matter how many opportunities or how many trainings. If you don't have self-motivation and work ethic to learn and to be better and to improve, then it doesn't matter how much effort anybody puts forth. So I can train almost anybody to lead a horse. It's not really that hard. And I can really train almost anybody to adapt horseback riding for people with disabilities. It's not really the world's hardest field, but I cannot make people care. And I'm in an industry where part of the job is caring. You have to care. You have to care about the horses. And you have to care about the people we work with, and you have to care about your other staff members, everybody. So I just think that is huge for me.
That's a great lesson for the students. Thank you.
So Ashley, for me, I think what Ms. Doherty said is correct. The hard work applies to any job. For me, it depends. There are different skill sets to be a judge and to be a lawyer. To be a lawyer, you have to be a good writer, a logical thinker for any type of law. And then if you want to be a litigator, where you're someone who's going into court and making arguments in court, not just writing legal briefs, you have to be able to make a persuasive argument and think quickly on your feet. To be a judge, it's also being able to think quickly, as there will be things where someone will object and I need to respond immediately, but I have the luxury of being able to reflect more than a lawyer does. If I'm asking a lawyer a question, they have to answer the question. They can't say, can I go back to my office and think about it? But as a judge, you also need the confidence to be able to be comfortable in whatever decision you make, and also to be compassionate. And for the reasons I addressed before, people are not always going to agree with my decisions. But if I'm able to articulate it and recognize the feelings of everyone, it helps people start moving forward.
Very good. Nice question, Ashley. Ashley asked the question last time too. Does anybody else have any questions?
I actually have a question.
Okay.
I guess it applies to both of you, but what's the most common reason that someone would come to court or come into your therapy place?
So for court, the most common reason people come to court is because they can't work out disputes on their own and they can't resolve matters on their own. So in everything but criminal, people are coming there voluntarily, whether it's because it's a custody case and parents can't figure out a solution on their own, a civil dispute where people are arguing over money, or in where I am now, orphans court, who gets grandpa's money from the will, or whether or not someone should, have a guardian. The other cases that we have 9,000 cases a year from are criminal cases, and that's when someone gets in trouble and they don't have a choice. They have to come to court because they've been charged with a crime and then have to defend themselves or they have no legal obligation to defend themselves, but they have the obligation of showing up to be prosecuted and see if the Commonwealth can prove their case against them. But we wind up having in our court system, trying to think of the numbers, we have 9,000 criminal cases a year and probably between 20 and 30,000 other cases a year handled by the 23 judges.
I would say that whether it's volunteers or participants coming to Pegasus, across the board, most of the people that come in just want a safe place where they can feel accepted. I say it all the time with this volunteers, in particular. I feel like our volunteers are like the island of misfit toys. They are just typically people that they might not fit in other settings or typical settings. And I work really hard, and our whole staff, our horses, everybody at Pegasus, one of our core values is that it doesn't matter who walks through the door, that they feel accepted and they are welcome and they belong, especially primarily for our riders and participants. So I think a lot of times, doesn't matter the disability or the diagnosis of people that are coming, they just want a safe place where they can, feel like they belong. And for a lot of our participants, they hear all the time what they can't do. They can't be in a typical classroom. They can't walk. They can't do this activity. They can't go there. It's not, you can't do this, you can't do that. And at Pegasus, that's not the goal. It's not to say you can't ride this way, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. It's how can we adapt this situation? What can we do to help you reach that goal? What can we do? And I work really kind of hard. And I mean, I tell this story all the time, and I try not to get emotional when I tell it. I worked with a boy from the first day I ever walked into Pegasus. I was 15, and now he's in college. I'm an adult. His father's on the board of directors. I'm friends with him now. We work together a lot. I went to his first horse show with him. I was there when he first learned how to trot. I was there when, he first went and rode independently. We were there together a lot. And he's a triplet. And one of his brothers actually has no diagnosis. And he's able to do sports. And Dad always went to all of his sporting events because Dad liked the sports. And he really just wanted to be able to compete in sports like his brother did. So we made that a goal. This was somebody that at the time didn't have reins, didn't ever go to horse shows, and we worked really hard to get there. And we went to this horse show. It was a little horse show, and I said to Mom and Dad, why don't I just take Kevin? I said, if he needs something, he can tell me. If he needs help, he can tell me. If things go south, I'll call you. You can come get him or whatever. I said, but just let him come. And he was doing community college at the time. He spent the day with us. When he needed help, he asked for help. If he didn't need help, he told me I'm going to go to the bathroom or whatever. And he came, his mom picked him up. He got in the car and he turned to his mom and said, Mom, I think I can go to college now. Like, I think I can do it. And you don't think that little horse show meant anything. I hate horse showing. It's early, it's buggy. I hate the stress of it. All I think about is all the things that could go wrong this day in front of people. But that's why we do it all. And I think those are the people that come to Pegasus, and that's what they want. They want to reach those life skills and those goals. Maybe they don't know that in the beginning, but it's why they stay.
That sounds amazing. When we're back in person, maybe we can hook up a field trip over there to Pegasus.
Yeah.
And to the court.
Mr. Gary brings people to the courthouse every year.
Oh, that's right. So that's already set up. We got to get the Pegasus trip set up. Okay, so we are winding down now. So one final pause for the students before I ask the two kind of closing questions. Go ahead, students. Someone that didn't ask a question last time. All right, well, we're gonna work on that. Okay, so as a parting question, either what is the favorite part of your job, or just parting words for students, what have we not talked about that you want to talk about? Either one of those, or honestly, anything you want to speak on. Judge Weilheimer, I guess, because Teresa was just talking.
Okay. I think it's that every obstacle is surmountable. And there is nothing, if you have a goal, you may not be able to get there directly, depending upon wherever your circumstances are. But if it's something that you want to do, you will be able to get there. It just might take longer. It may take a circuitous direction, but don't give up on your goals just because it's hard. You can make it work.
Okay, you said like so many quotables there. Can you give me a second?
If only my children like the things I said like you do.
They will in 10 years.
In my kid's bathroom, we have a chalkboard paint on 2 of the walls, and I'm regularly leaving them messages, and I just wait to see how long it takes them to roll their eyes at me.
I mean, that's part of being a parent. Totally.
That is true. That's a good
And
point.
students, how many of you roll your eyes at your parents every day?
See,
we got-
Lee is the honest one there.
We have very important polls during our career chatter virtual sessions. Last time it was how many of them made their bed in the morning. Because we talked about how that's a little start your day.
Right. Yeah, yours bed is made.
Yeah, and your bed is made.
I think you have to if you're studying in your room, if you're doing Zoom in your room, because otherwise it just looks bad. Unless you put up a virtual background like I have, which I can share if you all want this one.
That's a nice one.
That is a nice one.
You can do that, but it's got to be hard just getting out of your bed, going to your desk, and back to your bed later.
Yes. Yes.
We're all thoroughly sick of that.
I'm just pausing because I think Judge Weilheimer knows me too well, because I literally started making my bed because of these Zoom calls, and now it feels good. And I read the book, so I'm like, okay. But that's what really gave me the push, is these Zoom calls. It has my dirty laundry in the background.
Are you students making your beds this week since Tuesday?
Oh yes, we said
All right, very good.
that's right. We were going to do, and how they felt after, what did we say, 2 weeks?
2 weeks. We'll be back with you in 2 weeks.
Okay, yeah.
You're gonna get ready to answer the question.
I love how all of these tie back to each other. But anyway, okay, so Teresa, if you want to answer any of that.
I would say that, and I know this could also very easily ensue eye rolling, that although your mandatory community service in high school seems absolutely silly and like a pain, that you can 110% use it to your advantage, in making those connections that were talked about. But it also can really help you. I mean, I found my career, but even more importantly than my career, I found my happy, safe place. And I think that for your guys' age, it's very easy to get wrapped. And I was that kid. I was very wrapped up in my life is so hard. Nobody else has a hard of life as I do. Why this isn't fair. And it's so easy to be in that place. And it's valid a lot of the time. But there's ways to get away from that. And I found that through my community service. And I went to Pegasus and I was working with kids, adults, teenagers that were dealt a different hand in life than I was. They were dealt a hand with more obstacles, and they still managed every day to smile and be happy and give positivity to the world. So why did I have the right to have a chip on my shoulder? And it really helped me kind of take all that energy you have that you put towards that and put it towards something that mental health wise made me into a much better person and a much healthier person. And I think that you can really take advantage of volunteering in that way.
That was incredible. Thank you. And as a former grad, she's not even talking in general. She literally did the community service as a sophomore where you are all sitting. Well, actually not where you're sitting. She was in the building. But yeah, so thank you. And I just want to say again, thank you to the students and thank you to our guests. And I can't let it go without saying this. Everybody's camera is on, and like I know a few came in and out, but I give so much credit to the students. It seems easy. It's not. It's not at all. The camera's on. Yay. Students asking questions. Yay. And we're just going to get better and better at this. And it's 99.9% due to the amazing guests that we have. Could not have asked for better input from you both living out there in the world. But I'm going to leave our closure up to Ms. Doherty because she's so good at it.
You're on. There you go.
I paused awkwardly because my dog is barking, per usual. Excuse me. I am just so grateful for you sharing your personal takeaways from just life in general. And careers are one thing, and I think our students oftentimes get really stressed out and overwhelmed by the idea of having to have it all figured out at such a young age. And I think some of the big takeaways from conversations like these is it's okay to not have all the answers. What's important is to be open to exploring, to working hard, to making connections, to taking risks. And all of that was emphasized today. So I am so grateful. I think you'll be excited to see what takeaways the students are actually gaining today, even though, you know, verbally and vocally in front of y'all in this moment is not easy for them. But I look forward to sharing some of their reflections with you probably tomorrow or next week. So students, please just give them an expression of gratitude, maybe a thumbs up, a smile, a thank you, and hopefully we'll see you both in person in our library this year at some point.
It would be nice for all of us.
I know.
Mr. Bowley, let's do the hands in.
Yeah, we did a Ghost on 3 the other day, so and we're Abington folks, so Ghost on 3. Thank you, Dina, for your comment. Ghost on 3, hands in, students. Oh, see, eye rolling. There it is.
Eye roll. Yeah. It's okay. Ignore them.
It's an art form. It really is.
Oh, yeah. Ghost on 3. Ghost on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Goes.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having us.
Okay, wait. Judge Weilheimer and Teresa, can you stay on for 1 minute? And students, thank you so much. Students, you are dismissed. Right, Ms. Bowley?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
So much.
I realize as I open my mouth on certain things, I'm like, she probably wouldn't want me to mention that to 10th graders, but all right, it's out.
I don't think that at all. Every time something like that has happened, it's only been beneficial to everyone in the room, to be honest with you.
Real world.
It's true.
That's what this program is about. This program is about taking down all of because that's what makes kids feel alone.
Right.
Because so don't feel bad at all. I know in the moment, everyone's staring and not saying anything. And, but it always comes back to positive, always, like every time.
But I think that's interesting. Like I've been thinking about a lot, both between the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter, and Abington is such a diverse place. When you see it just on the news, it makes it seem like these conversations are easy, or that the answers are black and white, and they're not. Or even with what Teresa does of like asking for help or going to the right place for help. these are real struggles, and it's not just easy answers. And, I think the kids are done a disservice when certain things in the media or on social media make it seem like, oh, you should definitely know exactly what to do in these scenarios, because they're not easy situations.
No, they're seeing like the final, like the scenario happened, years ago or a little bit ago, and they're seeing like the person has talked about it for 3 years already and is like open and whatever, but that doesn't relay the struggle that was like in the moment time. So yeah, no, the more people we have visiting that open up, and I'm grateful, if any, no other emotion, but I'm grateful when people share like that. So I think it's completely fine.